afternoon, John.
Afternoon.
The podcast has survived from May to June, and now we're in July.
Yeah.
So lots of interesting feedback that I get, and hopefully you get good feedback. And we could branch out a little bit today, maybe.
Okay.
As we were discussing before we started, tomorrow is the 4th of July.
It is.
Tomorrow's the 244th anniversary of the publication of the Declaration of Independence. And for the first time in my 68 years as an American citizen, I'm feeling a little bit scared about it. I used to feel basically an unmitigated joy in celebrating the birthday of my country.
Mm-hmm.
And but a lot's happened in the last 6 months or so, and a lot of it's been going on for a long time. It's not necessarily like COVID, something that is brand new and has a serious impact on us. But there's been a shift in public discourse, and of course there's social media, which has a weird amplification of both good and ugly discourse in our world today. And so I've been thinking, and you and I have spoken in other forums and venues about the applicability of accountability to us as a collective. I get how that hidden thoughts and beliefs, feelings from my traumatized youth live in my subconscious, or even deep in what Jung calls the shadow, and that when I see them outside of me, reflected back from other people, that these are clues to what's really going on inside of me.
Yeah.
And they're an avenue toward freeing myself from automatic reliance on hidden beliefs, hidden feelings, hidden compulsions, so that I can exercise more choice and I can live intentionally. And so I think it would be fitting, as we talk about, or we focus on the 4th of July, which is the celebration of the nation that was founded to support freedom and individual liberty, that we take a look at what we might be discerning and see whether we can apply some of our principles to our responsibilities as citizens.
Yeah, that's going to be a interesting conversation, because you and I have talked about this before, how to bring this information to a collective consciousness level, group level, and I see this falls right in line with that.
Well, especially because we don't live in a vacuum. And in our Rusty Nail Club meeting last night, we were talking about how the group process is a microcosm of our society.
Yeah.
That everything that I do is in the context of a social reality, a social network. A social network can be as small as me and my spouse, all the way up to me and the other 7+ billion of us that inhabit this planet, and maybe beyond the Earth. I mean,
yeah.
There's certainly a network of reality far beyond planet Earth. So, and we're all embedded in these networks.
We are, and part of I see what's happening on the planet right now. Specifically where I'm at in the United States. When you started talking about them, we agreed to do this. As I was listening to you talk, I got the awareness image that my journey from the place I was before my recovery, and if I could like make it as succinct as possible, from this, I don't like to use the word, even the word redneck, mentality, or the word redneck refers to a group of people who are stigmatized. And I recently learned that redneck came from the coal miners. There was a workers that struck, and the people that were in the union and were fighting for better working conditions actually wore a red bandana. So even the term redneck has come to mean something it didn't signify when it was coined. But I did come from alcoholic violence, and by violence I mean that my style of communication was demeaning, diminishing, and then at times escalated to physical violence. And I found myself lost. And somebody said, "Well, try a 12-step meeting." And I thought, "What's a 12-step meeting?" And from that moment on, what I've discovered is that if I just admit where I'm at, and when I started the program, I was well, ignorant, in my own world. It was me, my gun rack, my truck. Leave me the hell alone. And that was my sphere of caring. That's what I was paid attention to. Now, my sphere of caring is global. It's bigger, broader, wider, more compassionate, more introspective about the part I'm playing. So what's happening in the United States, that's what happened to me. There was chaos, I separated, there was fighting, there was isolation, aloneness. It was me getting my posse of friends saying she was all that, and she was getting her posse of friends saying I was all that. And I simply took a breath, went to a place that I could find support, and started learning about how I worked internally and how I was influenced by conditioning. We call it in ACA, family of origin, dysfunction. The psychiatrists call it trauma. It's post-traumatic stress syndrome. And I started learning about myself. And in that search, I've seen how I've owned all those parts of myself that I didn't want to look at. And being we're talking about 4th of July, and we're talking about, because I have the same feeling. 4th of July doesn't mean like, hooray, how good are we, when I'm now aware of all the things that happened in the formation of this country. Not that I'd rather be any other place. America is where I want to be. It's one of the greatest nations on the planet, and we're struggling. And we're moving into a new awareness and comprehension of ourselves, and how to just be on the planet a different way. And that struggle for me personally was difficult. I was isolated, alone, lost. And through my process of accountability, I was able to incrementally shift my awareness to, and the simple way I can explain it, like I did, me, my truck, and my gun rack, to having care and concern for larger, making that larger, making that global community, what's going on in our nation, what's going on the planet. And then having these conversations with you that now that I'm in it, I'm going to see that it's going to be very revealing about me. And owning, let me start with, let's go deep real quick. I worked in the jail for 15 years, Sacramento County Jail. And racist was a hot topic. And I would ask those men to be accountable for their behavior, and mean, arrogant, entitled, criminal. And the topic of racism came up. And what I know about me is the conditioning I have had from birth till that moment in time if I wasn't racist, I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't paying attention to what was going around me. So I in a group of 25 men, different minorities, I'm a racist, and all the guys in the group, it looks like they suck their breath in. It's like, what do we do with that? And then I talked to them about, we're here owning our violence. I'm a violent man. There's not as much energy around me saying I'm a violent man because it's obvious. But when I say I'm racist, there's this underlying pain that comes out, or this underlying don't go there. And see, it's like now I just own that I'm imperfect, or I may, some people I may be dangerous because they're minorities and I'm the white guy in the classroom and I'm the teacher and I'm racist, and what are they going to do? When I owned I'm a violent man, that was the beginning of me not being a violent man. You can't change something you're not aware of. And even when I hear myself say that, there's this hit, there's this drop in my energy in my chest place. And it's my intent to see all people as equal. Am I there yet? The influence of my childhood, I remember watching Looney Tunes, and they had this cartoon of this Arab guy with this curved sword being all crazy and cutting people up, and that was a conditioning. That was on the cartoons, that Arabs are dangerous people. So this little kid boy mind took that in, and there was an imprint there beyond my conscious awareness. And then all the other things that happened, using the term nigger, experiencing what I experienced in my youth, being separated from them. We lived in Sacramento, is where we're not segregated, but you know what? There were no black people in my school. There was one after a while, and it was like it was like an anomaly. And we all pretended that we're all cool and he's cool, and I didn't understand him. Well, hi, my name's John. I'm a racist, and it is my intent to see all people as equal. And that's where I see the United States now owning. It's like I saw this thing about Columbus Day. It's like, well, okay, was he all that? He absolutely started the migration from Europe to the Americas, and we did create the United States of America, which is a fantastic thing. But there's also some things in there that aren't so pretty. That, I mean, not so pretty. That's it. That's a minimization. There's some terrible things that happen.
So can I stop?
Yeah.
Can I stop you there for a second? Because I want to dig deeper into this. So, what the last thing I heard you say was interesting. You self-corrected. You went from terrible things and minimizing, and it just, again, as I was listening to you share the process, I couldn't help but think this is the collective challenge that we have, that we, America, like all humanity, was traumatized from birth by slavery, but not just slavery, ignorance and poverty. And at the same time, it was a country that was founded on principles that no other country had ever been. There's never been a country founded on principles before, on universalizing principles of freedom and equality. That just never existed.
Right.
All countries before that were based on a race or an ethnic group or geographical location or all of the above.
Monarchy, kingship,
right,
dictatorship, yeah.
Right. And those were just ways that people learned to organize ourselves going into the modern era. But then consciousness started to shift, and Europeans were having a version of this conversation 300-400 years ago about monarchy and about freedom and about individual dignity versus that which the king or the church says is what it is. And so we started with these universal principles that we simply could not live up to, but it was like setting an intention. It was like the collective, we intend to have a country where all people are created equal and everyone has certain inalienable rights, among which are the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And everybody gets to do that uniquely and equally, and nobody else has the right to have an opinion about the right way to do that.
Yeah.
And that in order to make that happen in a safe environment, we create an agreement among ourselves that we're going to govern ourselves by laws, and that these laws will be based on the consent of the governed, and various principles were later on promulgated in the Constitution to figure out a way to do that that causes the least amount of harm. So here we are, 244 years later, still struggling to fulfill the intention that our founding fathers created, to have a society where everybody is free to do this. And we do not have, and we have not had, a collective process whereby we undergo the process that we do individually through accountability. And so when the deeper urges for change can no longer be ignored, we're kind of stuck, initially at least, with our old processes, just like I was when I started on my journey of recovery or intentional living, similar to yours. You had your world, and it was not only well defined, but it was well defended internally.
Yes. Yeah. Well defended. And I didn't even know that I was defending what I was defending. I just found myself in this high energy place when I thought somebody was disrespecting me or not doing what I thought was right, or was an asshole, or
Right. So here we are collectively, and it's, the challenge that we have is that the vast majority of us have not undertaken this individual journey yet, much less for us to do it as a collective.
Yeah.
And so it's the question then always comes back to how do I use accountability in my practice as a citizen? How do I have discernment? Because we have elections coming up, and we get to vote. We don't have to, but we get to. What are the criteria by which we make decisions? Can I be aware of my hidden criteria? Can I be aware of, just like you looked at, uninformed racism or unconscious racism?
And it was a conditioning that I had that seemed normal, that seemed
Correct.
That's the way it is. Yeah.
Correct.
So go ahead.
So I just to say now I've got to make a decision. I don't have to, but I'm going to choose to as a citizen. I have always voted. There are times when I don't want to because I'm not happy with the choices, but I somehow I believe that I choose to be responsible and do my best to make my best choices. And that, so now that's coming up in November, and like every election, this is a crucial election. And at least at the presidential level, the choices that we have before us they're not my choices. These are not the people I would nominate, but there they are. So I think the first question that we have to ask ourselves is, what are the criteria by which I make judgments about the political world? I've got to make choices. So what are the beliefs, hidden or otherwise, by which I'm going to justify my choices?
Well, in our circle of friends and people, that is a thought that you can hold. When I went to elect go to vote before my recovery, that question wasn't in my sphere of awareness. I went on what I thought was best, or I leaned left, and I was heavily influenced by that ideology, and I voted according to it. Now I don't lean either way. I'm for me, and I'm for everybody else, and it scares the hell out of me that this unaware place that I have, that everybody has had conditioning to formulate their choices. And what I know and what you know is that 7/8 of the information that's informing the decision is subconscious. It's in that nebulous place, in that subconscious pool of information, like that cartoon of the Arab, and the depictions of African American people in cartoons, and Step and Fetch It, that kind of stuff. To even question that is a higher awareness position. And hopefully through the work I'm doing with my clients and people that come to my workshops and this podcast, is that we begin to broach a subject that most people, it's not even their field of awareness. And what I'd like to do is, when you say accountability, when I say accountability, I have a picture of what that is. Accountability to me is the liberating moment. Accountability to our culture at large means somebody either goes to jail or gets blamed or gets sued. So who the hell wants to be accountable? Because that's the person that takes the fall.
Or gets canceled. Now we have even more punishments.
Yes. Yeah. So and I don't know if we said this on the podcast or we said it before we were getting ready for the podcast, that language is powerful. Language, it is my belief that I speak my reality into existence. Using the language of pre-recovery, my existence ended up isolated, alone, separated from my family, wondering what the hell's going on. Everything I saw of value is like my dark night of the soul. My job, I kept my job, but everything, all the value that my job gave me was pointing to my house, my wife, my kids, and all my stuff that I had. And that's, see, I did good. That's, look at me, I made it. I'm doing it, and I was empty inside. So I'm gonna get back to the accountability. When we dialogue about the meaning of these words, and then I want to talk about what my picture of accountability. When I say accountability, the picture I have is that I'm stating the results of my experience, my total experience, subconscious and conscious awareness. When I say I'm an alcoholic, or I'm a racist, or I'm mean, I see that end result is simply in alignment with the conditioning. It was, and the conditioning is in the subconscious. The subconscious means I don't know, but it's where the all the motivation for my safety is stored. We talk about the fight, flight, freeze mechanism, getting us ready to fight, to run away, or to freeze in a life or death situation. Well, this mechanism has taken this total information and created a belief that's complicated, and it sees that I need to stay in alignment with the where this is directing me to go, and that's not really clear. It believes that if somebody steals something from me, there's something wrong with me. So if somebody steals something from me, either if I see it, I'm gonna like stop him, beat him up. I have the right to do all this, because that whatever he's taken is part of my value. And now I understand. I would be talking to this with the guys in the jail, and somebody would say, well, what if somebody came in and stole your TV right in front of you? And my response was, as they're leaving, I would tell them, make sure you get the remote, because it's real difficult watching that thing without a remote. And they would laugh, but that's actually the way I see it right now. That TV is not that important for me to put myself in harm's way, or to hurt somebody else, or to lock somebody up. Now, there's a lot more to that. It's simply, how do I say this? That sphere of concern is bigger. I don't put a lot of value on things I've accumulated, including my experience. I want to live a life of peace. So I'm open to, the dude needs a TV. He can have the TV. I can buy another TV. And don't get me wrong, I have the number of the local police, which I will call, because they're set in place to keep me safe. That's their job. I'll let them do their job.
I want to explore this language thing a little more, if you're open.
That'd be good to do.
Because you know, certain words become charged. So you said that you found it less. There was less of an emotional charge to say I'm John, I'm a violent man, than to say I'm John, I'm a racist. And I think that you know, the other thing to always keep in mind when we talk about accountability is no blame, no judgment. Because if I'm going to use my dawning awareness of internal beliefs, I'm a racist, to beat myself up, then I'm not freeing myself from anything. I'm
absolutely correct. That's an essential part of this, yes.
So when I say I'm a racist, I got to tell you, I have all kinds of charges show up in my body.
Yeah.
And some of them are resistance energies. Some of them are shame emotions. There's a whole basket, and I think mostly because it's not a conversation that I have found a context within which to have it relatively safely.
I have the same. Go ahead.
Even in my church, when we had an African-American minister for 10 years, we could not find a way to have a safe environment to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And so there's something about the trauma that's associated with this. I think even more than words like sexism, homophobia, all these other words that we use to look at internal beliefs about the other, don't have the same charge for me as this racist one does. And so somehow it's connected to a trauma that has been unhealed for all of us, because it seems to me that the ongoing inability for us to have a conversation that is not immediately defensive or aggressive, violent, is information about the state of our subconscious as a collective. It's information about the state of my subconscious as an individual, and it's also because the difficulty of having this conversation with others indicates that there's something else. It's not just mine. The world would be so much nicer if I could be the only one that has this issue. Then that means everyone else is free from it, but no.
So when I'm a racist, let me give you some background. My father was a redheaded, blue-eyed Irishman. My mother was Hispanic, Native American, Portuguese. That was her heritage. And when I was born, he wanted a white baby, and he was expecting a white baby, I guess. And me and my brothers really tan well. We take a tan really well. And he was ashamed of us. He was ashamed of my mother, and he was ashamed of us because we came from her. we're Catholic, and my mother wanted him to go to church with us specifically on Easter. And one day on Easter, he came out of the house when we were getting ready to leave, all dressed up, and he went to church with us. Well, he came back, and then I heard him arguing with my mother that he felt awkward at church because he was surrounded by a bunch of pickaninnies. And he was referring to me and my brothers. And I didn't know what the word pickaninny meant, but I felt that energy.
Sure.
So I was sitting in ACA group, and this thought came to me about my own racism. You know, look at my stuff, and I didn't mean a whole lot. And then I got, oh my God, my father was racist towards me, and I didn't do a thing. I'm innocent. And then I felt this pain, and then the picture came, holy cow, that's what they feel. No, I don't want this. And I'm a racist. I used the N-word. I saw African Americans as less than. I even saw Native Americans as less than. And I'm one. I mean, this is insidious. I want free of this, and the only way I know to get free of it is to own it, and then because you can't let go of something you don't have a good grasp on, or you don't understand that it's part of your subconscious conditioning. And somebody raised in this society, I don't know how they could not have a conditioning and say that they're absolutely not racist. And I know there are people that can do that. I do know that there are people who can do that. I've met them. And I lost my train of thought. But so me being accountable for my racism puts me in a position of compassion for other people who I see as racist. And I don't go to blame and judgment. I don't go to this, you're a no good piece of shit. I go to, wow. And I take a breath, and I open up a space to maybe listen to them, to understand the conditioning and everything that went into them having this mindset coming from fear. And so I, as an individual, am this source of compassion. And I know, Marty, that changes the world. I would like to see it change it in a way that is like a blanket, woof, everything go. But without this, me holding this, without me being honest and truthful with myself, if I don't own racist, it's going to come out sideways in my language, in my motivation for my behaviors. So, and I know that owning it is the end of it, is the beginning of the end of it. So how do we do that on a national level? I have no idea. I know that everybody I work with, one person at a time, and then that one person influences a group of people. There's 6 degrees of separation, and take a breath and talk to more people about this that are willing to talk.
Let's just, in an attempt to have clarity, because I think what you said about that when you mentioned the language issue a few minutes ago is really, really critical. So let's define, what do we mean by racist and racism? Because there's been an attempt to redefine that word recently, and I think it's important that we at least have an understanding of what we mean by that. So what's your understanding of when you say I'm a racist, what is the content there?
For me, and this is not complete, I don't think I can give you a complete understanding of it. It's associating a group of people with a derogatory mindset, or less than, or other than, and there's a fear in needing to keep mine so that they don't take from me. It's like it's a feeling of it. Well, if I could use a word, if I can find a word, arrogant. would be part of it. Not understanding what they're doing, or seeing them less than, just seeing them as not as valuable as a white person or a Caucasian or yeah, that was even difficult to explain that.
Well, I'd like to offer a refinement. So if I could, not only is racism, in my understanding, the assignment of superior value to my own group and lesser value to the other, but it's also simultaneously the assumption that the characteristic defining the group automatically confers certain characteristics to the whole group.
Yes.
So every black person is fill in the blank, and the implication is every white person is fill in the blank.
Right. So I don't know. I'm guessing at the name of this book, but I believe it was Blind Spot, and it talked about this issue of racism. And one of the things that we're explaining in that book is that as a human being, we're built in with biases for our tribe or our group. So anything other than what we look like, feel like, talk like is seen as suspect. That's a built-in bias. That's a reticular activating system, evolutionary aid in survival. That's part of just how we're made as human beings. I think Jordan Peterson talks about what's that? Crustacean. Anyway, he talks about crustaceans having this built-in mechanism that if they fight, the one that loses a chemical of confidence, or serotonin, whatever it might be, and he will go for a minute and he will not fight. That's built into the biology, the survival mechanism of this. And I see this bias thing as something that is innate in us. And I want to offer the need for it may have passed, and it's still there. Recognizing that aspect of it, and then recognizing the conditioning that we've had through being socialized, and it's a mess. I don't even know if I answered your question.
No, that's it's important to build towards some understanding, because there cannot be a conversation without mutual understanding of the terms that we're using. So I do think that, because I was going to ask you next, and you already anticipated my question a little bit there, which is like, why am I a racist? Because because you put little kids of different races or ethnic backgrounds together, and they're not racists. They're not.
I have the same answer as why do I attract unemotional men, or why am I violent, or why am I always running away from relationships? The answer to that why question is because you think it's a good idea based on your subconscious pool of information and your family of origin dysfunction and trauma. It's stuck in there, motivating our behaviors in our best interest. It's looking out for us, but we've been conditioned, say me in the attachment style I developed was avoidant attachment. I was like desiring to be close to somebody, and then when that somebody got close to me, the old information that's where I got my pain from my caretakers. So I would move close and then move back away, and I wouldn't know why I'm moving back away. It's built into this thing, and if I don't own that I'm unable to sustain and maintain long-term caring relationships, it's a mystery. It's got to be either her, them, all of them, or it's got to be some other thing. But it's definitely not me, because look out there, it's all happening. And this accountability process, it brings it back to me and how I'm participating in this. So if I understand that I have an avoidant attachment disorder that was ingrained, conditioned in me as an infant, and that information has been imprinted in a place where it's hyper vigilant, looking for that to happen again, and I'm like in this love place with this person. They get close, and I find myself backing away. It's a mystery. So the answer to why are we racist? Family of origin conditioning, socialization, being conditioned in a culture that it was that it was just set in place, and nobody talked about it. It was accepted.
Well, nobody in the predominant culture talked about it. There's the irony is that African Americans and blacks talked about it all the time. But that's part of the,
Right.
that's part of our acculturation. As a white person, I didn't have to know about that.
No.
And, I mean, I don't buy into this white privilege, white fragility stuff. I think that's heading back toward tribalism, but that's understandable.
Yeah.
And so the question that you're sharing raised for me is that somehow it's not just family of origin trauma. I mean, that's how I develop my stance in the world.
Yes.
But there's also something going on collectively, simultaneously, that is feeding into that in an even more subliminal kind of way, such that there are collective subconscious agreements. I think you would call that collusion.
Yes.
There's collusion that exists below the radar of consciousness. Then for me, the mechanism by which that develops is really important to try to appreciate, because I'm not only shaped by my individual experience, but simultaneously I'm shaped by our collective experience. And then there's this Russian doll collection of collectivenesses. So there's my family, there's my neighborhood, there's my state, there's my country, there's my globe, all that stuff. They're all impacting me. And that's so I think part of the reason these conversations are difficult to hold is that there are all of these nuances in our subconscious that are difficult to tease out, any one of which could feel like a landmine if you step on it the wrong way, and you trigger a violent reaction in yourself or another person that then cuts off communication, because the defensiveness becomes so overwhelming that that survival mechanism that you talked about just somehow gets triggered, and like survival is now the only thing I can do.
Yeah. And when I find myself being defensive, I'm participating in my own oppression, because that response is coming from what I know, from my experience. And if it's a response that causes separation and isolation or destruction, I'm tuned into, I don't want that. I want to create connection. So I use the response. If I find myself being defensive, which I do around this topic of racism, I know that there's something in me that needs attention, that needs to be ferreted out. There's a conditioning in there that's hooked into this, and this powerful mechanism of survival. We call it all kinds of things: fight, flight, freeze mechanism, reticular activating system, survival mechanism, that is designed to keep me safe based on my environment and what I can perceive from my environment. So I learn ways to watch out for things. An example of that is if somebody went to a pool of water, drank it, and was dead, the next guy came along and picked up his bones and put his skull there with some crossbones, which meant don't drink the water. Skull and crossbones, everybody knows what that is. Don't look out, pay attention. And then when it gets into this topic, it's not so obvious. But there's a mechanism inside me that's trying to protect me by all my reaction. So what I teach and what I do in my life is I own the result. Where do I find myself? That tells me what's tied into this subconscious pool of information that is stuck, that's an energy block that is keeping me from full authentic expression.
One of the realities that you were talking about, which again I think is worth dwelling on, is that every stage of our evolution has that quality of existing in a way that protects itself. So that tribal phase that you talked about is actually the second longest phase that our species lived in. The longest phase was actually hunter-gatherer, pre-tribal, and then we moved into tribes, and then agriculture became a way to consolidate and provide each tribe the material means of survival. So you didn't have to run around to try to find food as we did in the hunter-gatherer Paleolithic period. So this period of our acculturation has been going on for millennia. It's been going on for at least 10,000 years. So yeah. The endless reinforcement of that system, that tribal system, I have to be a good member of my tribe so that my tribe survives. If I act out, I could be causing the death of my tribe.
Yeah.
Which is why when, for again, millennia, any member of the tribe that did anything to betray the tribe would automatically be killed. Exiled or killed. I mean, there was no like a 10-year sentence. This is because that's a life or death crime against the tribe. So now you have all these tribes around the globe that are behaving this way toward each other. So that created this period of empires and wars of aggression and all, that's where slavery was actually created by the tribal culture. So I take people from your tribe and enslave them because obviously you're inferior and we're superior. So there's no moral issue here. So for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, this way of being was all we knew. And the way of being that informed the creation of our country through the Declaration of Independence and the other principles that we brought to constitutional government were actually relatively new at the time. You think about the emergence of the individual as the appropriate locus of identity and sovereignty. I have a right to be me, regardless of what my tribe thinks.
And in the process of that was also when the picture in their minds when they created it was exclusive. It was about them and the people like them because they owned slaves. They were doing the extermination of the Native American population. And I'm not saying they did it consciously. It was just part of the evolution of the United States. And the good news is we're at a point right now where we're here. We're diverse now. Okay, this is, and it's painful. It's I want to offer dangerous. This particular activating system is our alert to life or death situations. And everybody is acting as if it's a life or death situation with locking up people, shooting people, looting, I'm going to get mine mentality. And it's necessary in one place that we're going to go through this. And it's like good news and bad news. The bad news is, holy shit, we're going through this. And if enough people like you and I, and there's a lot of people talking about this at this level, and there's going to be a shift. There's going to be a shift, and I'm excited and scared all at the same time.
But that's an appropriate reaction given the way that we're constructed. It's the point I was trying to make, that you and I, by virtue of being human, have this deeply embedded tribal truth in our limbic system. It lives in our emotional brain. It's protective, like you said, and it can't not be protective. Right. So this innovation of individual liberty, individual identity is so new that we're still a long way from completing to create the processes that support that against our tribal instincts. So this tribal identity is still alive and strong, and it's just like with accountability. If I don't own it, I'm a tribal being. It's going to be difficult to rise above it and to move to the next level, because I won't notice, because that's what racism is. It's a version of this tribal my guys against your guys consciousness, which is normal, natural. It's historically what humans have done more than anything else. We haven't done this, it's me against the world. No, it's us against you guys.
Right.
So that's deeply embedded in us. And that's part of the reason why it's difficult in a country like the United States, which is self-consciously founded on principles of beyond tribalism, on the principles of individual liberty, individual sovereignty, consent of the governed. Those are all anti-tribal beliefs. And the tribalism is not going to go without a good fight, because it has a right to defend itself. And so this is the way I see this. Where we are right now is that we're still in that great struggle to create what accountability is designed to support, which is I'm in charge of my life. I create my own life with my thoughts. I create my own life with my beliefs. And regardless of the tribal impact that got me here, my tribe is no longer in charge of me. I'm in charge of me. And I can't blame my tribe anymore for anything that goes wrong, quote unquote, because we've learned, this is this evolutionary principle, that we create our world with our thoughts and our words. And it's not a tribe. A tribe doesn't speak words, individuals do.
Yeah.
And this is where both the opportunity and the danger is. And it's been there for quite some time. It just may be becoming a little more obvious right now, but it's been part of our struggle for at least since the founding of this country.
One of the things I've come to awareness is that survival of the fittest, tribal mentality, that my welfare, my safety is tied into your welfare and your safety. That's my new come from. So it expands my field of influence, my field of responsibility, how I carry myself. Because without you, I'm nothing. I mean, all by myself. I mean, I wouldn't have and simply put, I wouldn't have the roads to drive on. I wouldn't have the house to live in. I wouldn't have the structure around me. And then the availability to connect on a heart level and feel the meaning of life, which is my relationship with you and your value to me, which I didn't have before.
The innovation that this country was founded to support is that is done freely. That if love is coerced, it's not love. So when I am capable of seeing my value in relationship with you and everyone else, and I choose that amplifies that collective power that we have, as opposed to the tribal way, which is I've got to defend my tribe against you, or the individual way, which is I'm solely responsible and I'm the island. Where we're heading for evolutionary is we're going from tribe to me to all of us, to be identified as a human being and to notice that every human being is the same at base.
Yes, the common belief when you were talking, I was thinking about when a catastrophe strikes, when like say an earthquake strikes, or there's a fire, or there's a natural disaster. Everybody responds without question, who are you? I mean, are you a lawyer or are you the garbage man? That's not even in the equation. I remember in the California earthquake, when the freeways collapsed, that people were going in there and grabbing people out of their cars, and there was no question about who are you. It was you're there, and I think Schopenhauer talked about this thing that happens in a crisis situation where the other and you, there's no distinction. He talked about a story of a police officer in Hawaii going on this road up the mountain, and he found this guy standing next to a cliff ready to jump off. He stopped his car, grabbed him, and he almost went over with him because he wouldn't let go. And then a reporter said, well, why did you do that? And the officer said, at that moment, I could not let go. There was no distinction, my life, your life. I believe that's what is going to be uncovered. That's the core of what makes us human, is our ability to care for other people. And when it comes down to it, in that crisis moment, in that dangerous moment, we respond as if it's true, and then talk about it like, oh, that's a good person. Oh, you know, I wouldn't have the courage to do that. And I want to offer, yeah, you would. Yeah, you would. Everybody would do the same thing. And it's just amazing that isn't what we focus on when we're raising our children, is that we're basically good, and that we depend on each other, and each other is valuable, and your welfare is directly tied to my welfare. So that makes you valuable to me. And then we'll talk about what you do, how you look.
And there you, within that statement that you just made, is the core principle of every one of the world's religions. Every one of the world's religions says something to the effect of, there's only one thing going on, we're all part of it, there is no separation, and separation, the belief in separation, is a developmental challenge, because a baby is not born with the awareness of its universality. It may be born with the feeling of it, but the capacity to articulate and communicate that can only develop over time. And that's where our challenge is, because we're acculturated as specific individuals in a specific family. So all that stuff is gone by the time we have language. That sense of universality that we may have in the womb is impacted by the trauma of birth and then, you know, infancy. So that means we can celebrate that. That's universally true for all of us, and we all go through the exact same process of trauma and alienation, and then learning to reconnect to the truth, this universality that you talked about, that's proven in those kinds of situations. And that's universally true. That situation you said happened in Hawaii, but that could happen anywhere in this planet, and the same thing would have happened.
And I want to offer, it happens every day.
Right.
There's somebody, I live in a trailer park, and the next door neighbor, the woman came over with her walker and says, can you help me? And I just said yes. She wanted me to go to the drugstore for her, but it didn't matter. Yeah, listen, whatever you need. And I didn't think about, you're disrupting my time. I'm a busy man. I got things, important things to do. I just simply said yes, and then figured out how she could be okay.
Right. So you didn't notice your anti-walker belief.
Yeah, my bias.
Ableism.
Old people bias, and that's strange coming from one that is older.
Yeah, but I think that, just to circle back to the beginning of this conversation, and maybe to wrap it up, is that we have, by virtue of our humanity, we have these series of biases and beliefs that necessarily were part of our growth. And because they're unspoken, they're in the unconscious, they bedevil us in ways that we're not aware of. And sometimes they become so painful that we have to do something about it. And that's true for individuals, and it's also true for societies and cultures. And clearly our country is going through a growth phase, a difficult one. The outcome of it is not preordained any more than the outcome of my own struggles preordained. But what I can do is continue to do my best to share what I've learned and continue to learn, and to cultivate connections to like-minded and like-souled people, so that we can support one another in our racism and in our biases, whatever they are. No blame, no judgment, so that we create a world where everyone has the possibility of creating his or her own life, pursuing happiness, as the founder said, according to his or her own internal deep soul desires, and not mine.
Yeah, it's the where I teach the reticular activating system survival mechanism is the mechanism that's keeping me stuck with conditioning and biases and trauma, is the same mechanism that is the magnificence of my humanity, the creative force, the ability to get a focus and then create that in the physical world. It's amazing. Everything we see, everything around us was first a thought, and then it became something. And I see the power, and I'm grateful for me simply shifting my focus to me against the world, to me and the world, imprinted on that reticular activating system, which finds the facts that prove what's in there. I see humanity, I see compassion, I see people who are seeking, I see people who are in pain. I see that instead of what I used to see was people that want to take my stuff evil, mean, degenerate, immoral, all the judgments that I used to put on it. Now I see people who are struggling. And it's the same mechanism. It's the same mechanism, only now I'm feeding it the information that I want. It is my intent to walk in beauty, peace, and compassion with an open heart, open mind. I say that, it imprints on this mechanism, and I find myself talking to you on a podcast, which never entered my mind. I had no idea how to do it. I'm a boomer. This is like weird shit. And I find myself manifesting these things and talking to people all over the world about this what's happening to us. Why am I finding myself in these dysfunctional relationships time after time after time? Then I explain this mechanism of conditioning in the subconscious, and they tear up. They thank me for it. And it's vital information. I am a magnificent creative being. I like that.
So as we wrap up here, we celebrate the 4th of July, which is commemorating a country that was founded so that what you just said is true for everybody.
Yes.
And that's a world we can intend to create for ourselves and for all human beings.
Yeah. Thank you, Marty.
So thanks, John. Happy 4th. I look forward to the next one.
Okay. Yeah. Very good. Thank you.
Thanks.